Ready to make a real impact every day? Join the Active Day Home Care team and help clients maintain their independence in the comfort of their own homes. Make a difference in someone's life as you provide essential daily assistance and protect their health and happiness. Earn up to $20 an hour and enjoy additional perks like optional daily pay, 401k, paid time off, ongoing educational training, and more. Join a team that values care, compassion, and your professional growth. Visit activeday.com to apply.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
My name's Adele Onyango, and welcome to another episode of Legally Clueless. No, seriously, I have no clue what I'm doing, but I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one. Hey you, welcome to episode 329. I'm doing something a bit different because it's so cold where I live. So I've moved my microphone from my home studio into the living room where I have been burning a hot fire for like the last couple of hours. So if you hear any cackling or slight screams, because sometimes I scream when like the wood bursts, you know that sound? I don't know why it throws me off. Just know I'm trying to make sure you still get this podcast, but I don't freeze to death. Okay? If you are a OG member or an OG member, I truly appreciate you. Thank you so much for being part of this family. And if you're new here, do you know what hit me? We've got a show for every weekday. All I have to do is just make sure I have enough energy levels to give you your midweek teas and ask a therapist. And if I do, we will have a show for every weekday. So Mondays, you get Legally Clueless. Tuesdays, oh, hang on. Tuesdays, you don't get anything. I'd forgotten. Okay. Tuesday, you gotta rest from my voice. Because also, like, you can't be hearing my voice every day, surely. Tuesdays, you get a rest. Wednesday, you get the midweek teas. On Thursdays, we have For Mannerless Women, which is our new show. Thank you to everyone who has shown it so much love. So if you prefer to watch it on YouTube, you can do that. But if you prefer to listen to audio podcasts, I get you, boo. Like, I love podcasts over YouTube anytime. So I get it. New episodes will be going out every Thursday of that show. And Fridays, we have Ask a Therapist. Okay, so that means we need to figure out Tuesday. We just leave it as a break. Anyway, I'll figure it out. If you're new, that's kind of like what's happening here. I know I've given you too much information, but welcome nonetheless. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and officially join the family by signing up for our newsletter. You can do that. The links are in the show notes. Ooh, this is what's coming up in this episode.
When a parent gives birth to a child with a disability, there's a way the society perceives both the parents and the child. Are they cursed? The reason why they even took me to a special school is because the whole of my primary life, I had never met even just one person with disability. As much as I had a prosthetic, I used to hide it. So I would wear my skirts, school uniform, very long skirts. They would literally not show my leg. In high school, at least someone could see just some small part of my prosthetics. But in campus, not even my roommate. I think it's only one or two roommates who got now an opportunity to see my leg. I don't remember in university, not a single day I remember where I was confident enough to talk about my disability.
That is Meg or Magdalene. And I actually met her at our group therapy sessions earlier this year, and she's just an incredible woman. Incredible woman. And what I didn't know is on my way home, there is a fantastic billboard. I always kept trying to figure out what it was for. It has this huge smiling woman who just looks so good. Turns out it's Meg. Yeah. And I had no idea. And I would be passing that billboard when I'm going to group therapy and when I'm coming from group therapy. But anyway, she came for group therapy. It was such an honor to meet her. And then she expressed interest on being on the podcast. And we made it happen like we do. All right. So before we jump into 100 African stories, I need to remind you that we have our wellness talk that's coming up on the 28th of June. Drum rolls. Our guest speaker is none other than Yvonne Kanye. I'm super excited for this one because it speaks to exactly where I'm at in my life. I am running one business, trying to set up my second one properly, and battling and navigating all of the fucking fear that comes with that, all of the bureaucracy, because what is this government? And taxes, goodness. That part dinner. And trying to tell myself that even though I don't speak the business lingo, I belong in this space. I don't know if other business owners, if you or entrepreneurs, I don't know if you experience that as well, where you have this overwhelming feeling of imposter syndrome, you know? I think you definitely should, if you have a business or you're thinking of rolling out or taking the first step to actualizing this business idea you have, you should definitely come for our wellness talk because it's guaranteed to be one of the few spaces where you can talk about the human experience when it comes to building and running a business. Because our guest speaker, Yvonne Kanye, is successfully running two businesses. And she first started, loving business when she was in high school, right? And then in university when she was in the States. And she came back to Kenya, started her first business, and has just launched her second one. She has experienced everything from the highs of profits. I remember once she talked about it being a mistake, but it was also a high of the business making so much money and her just looking at it and not knowing where to put it and then ending up wasting it. But that's kind of like a good problem, if you ask me. But she also talks about having to navigate an employee she trusted, stealing huge sums of money from her business. And one tough pill I've had to swallow with business is that you're going to have to trust people. And with that comes the possibility of them betraying your trust. I once had a manager who was incredibly toxic. I couldn't see it at the beginning. Incredibly toxic. And they were working for me, but trying to set themselves up. Does that make sense? And which I guess everybody does to some degree, but for them, it was more like they were trying to exploit and steal clients and lie, and oof, it was a mess. It was a mess by the time I was severing that tie, and it left me so unable to trust other people. It took me one more year before I hired employee 001 post that trauma. Yeah, you're going to have to trust people. And I love that Yvonne Kanye, our speaker, is going to talk about this. The system she put in place, yes, after losing huge sums of money because of this terrible employee, but just knowing there's a balance because inevitably you're going to have to trust and you're going to perhaps be disappointed, She's also going to talk about scaling. So she moved from one business to two. How did she do that? What are the numbers when it comes to that? What do you need to look out for? Yvonne is also going to be talking about leveraging content creation and social media, especially now. There is a friend of mine who says it's so right. Lee, if I can't click on you, you don't exist. That is so true for business. That is so freaking true for business. And I dare say across all industries. Yeah. So how can you leverage on this? What are the trends that are really working for businesses? So we try and make our wellness talks to be super accessible, even cost-wise. So not only are they virtual, meaning that wherever you are in the world, you can join us, but they are just 1,000 Kenya shillings. 28th June, 10 a.m. East African time. Make sure you join us. Let's work on our businesses. Let's build community around that. Let's workshop our business ideas together. I'm definitely going to be at the talk and I hope to see you there. Grab your tickets via the link in the show notes and share about this with everyone who you know could benefit from coming for this talk. We should jump into 100 African stories, shouldn't we? We should. Yeah? Okay. Here is Meg's story, the radio presenter who used to hide her leg.
100 African stories on Legally Clueless. Stories from Africa.
My name is Magdalene Chisoli. I am a woman first. Other than that, I'm a woman living with disability. I use a prosthetic limb on my left leg. So I was born in Kitale and partly raised there. I would say I had a very interesting childhood. It was the best. And I like saying that I'm a community child because I was not just raised by my parents. I was raised by my grandparents, my uncles, and also my parents. Now, why I'm saying my childhood was interesting is because I was a bubbly child. So earlier on, I mentioned that I use a prosthetic limb. So my cause of me having one leg is because I was born like that, congenital rather. Growing up, I didn't have friends or people who would kind of discriminate me or even say silly things. They all embraced me. And so my childhood, I was a bubbly child. I was all over. I even remember there was a time an uncle of mine recently was reminding me, he was like, see, we were looking at you as a child and we were wondering, all these things you're doing, jumping up and down, why can't you just, settle? So I really was able to take part in sports. I could play, games, whether it's in school, in the estate. And I really, really had a good life, I would say, in my childhood. And at the beginning, I think after my mother gave birth to me, she stayed with me probably for several months. And so I started staying with my grandmother, my maternal grandmother. I stayed with her until I was in class 6. And so that time or that period that I lived with my grandmother, it was really, really nice. I think she loved me. I feel like she loved me more than my mom. But they both, of course, loved me. She used to make me, people would say I was her handbag. Everywhere she would go, she would literally go with me. And she would really push me and encourage me to be, who I wanted to be a better person. And she also would discipline me. I remember there was a time where I did something against her will. And she looked for some cane. She really hit me. I was so mad. I was like, why is she? Why is she doing this? But I'm grateful that she needed to discipline me for me to now be a better, person and know that whatever I had done initially was wrong. I shouldn't repeat and do that. Grandmother was also someone who really believed in education. And she ensured that I had been taken to school. Of course, my parents were paying school fees and also checking up on me. And when I look back or in retrospective, I don't remember any time where, let's say, my childhood friends maybe discriminated me. They loved me. They embraced me. I think for them, I don't know if they didn't see me like a different person. I was just part of them, part of this particular community. And they were like, yeah. In fact, when it came to games, they would, want me to be part of their team. If I'm going to this other team, they'll be like, no. Don't go to that team. Please come to this other team. And it was really nice. There were games I could play, which I feel sad for the current generation. They don't get to experience that. I would say kati and jumping ropes, So you can imagine me with one leg. I didn't have a prosthetic by then in my childhood. Yes, I was using a very long crutch for movement. So you can imagine me and one long crutch and jumping around. bubbly, engaging in activities that kids are also doing, being here and there and not just grounded or just staying in one space. Yeah, and that's why I said that my childhood was very interesting. It was really, really interesting. And then, so later on, my grandmother started becoming sick, and I had now to be moved and stay with my uncles. I stayed with my uncles until I was in class 8. So both my uncles and my aunties, and they really took care of me. And you see, coming from my grandmother who had not really spoiled me or pampered me. As I mentioned, she was a disciplinarian, so she really would not entertain some stuff. And coming now to my uncles, with my grandmother, I was the only person living with. We were just the two of us. So there were no other, family members. There were no other kids. And that's why probably she pampered me, or even she just made me feel comfortable. And now going to my uncles, I had cousins and also their parents. And they also did not, I would say, discriminate me. They embraced me. But now there, we needed to work. With my grandmother, there were chores that she would not allow me to do. But I can wash utensils. I couldn't mop. But you see now, because I'm staying with my uncles and my aunties, them they see, an individual. They don't see a child with a disability. They see just like any other child. And so they kind of trained me in terms of, this is how you're supposed to, take care of yourself. This is how you can also help in the house cause, you can also support in one way or the other, and not just seclude me or discriminate me and say, just because you have a disability, weka kando. No, there was nothing like that. And they were also disciplinarian. They really wanted the best for me. And they would even go ahead and look for ways to make me perform better in my grades, to be able to, be a better person in the future. And remember, still during that particular time, I was still using a crutch. And I know what you're asking yourself is why didn't they even buy for you a prosthetic or even look for something better for you to be able to walk around? It's because acquiring a prosthetic, it's very expensive. Personally, I like saying it's like buying land or even a car. And so my parents could not afford, my grandmother or even my uncles, even if they had to do a harambe, they felt like because I am growing, they will need to keep on buying the prosthetics. Remember, the prosthetic does not grow. When I'm growing as a child, the rest of my body parts are growing, but the prosthetic itself will still remain the same size. So for them, they were just exploring different ways of how I can either acquire a free prosthetic or someone, a donor who would come and just sponsor me and enable me, have a leg. And so what was really at the back of their minds is, how do we ensure that at least she goes to school, she is doing well, just like any other child, and at least she still has the crutch. So she's able to still move around, play, and, do stuff. And yeah, they made it so well. And it's only until I cleared my class 8. So that's when I went and moved in with my parents. And so remember, I started with my grandmother and my uncles. They are all in Kitale. And then now when I joined Form 1, I didn't go to Form 1 in Kitale. Now that's the time that my mother picked me, went to Kisumu. When a parent gives birth to a child with a disability, there's a way the society perceives both the parents and the child. Are they cursed? Maybe the parents did something and this is just some form of payment for them to give birth to a child with this kind of disability. And I also don't know if my mother was, maybe she had not really mental issues, but the whole experience of giving birth to a child with one leg, if it was a lot for her, whether she faced some form of discrimination, let me say from my father's side or even from her side, or whether people called her names, or whether they said all manner of things. I've really never had that conversation with both of them to just find out what happened. Unfortunately, I lost my mom, so I cannot be in a position to say that. But I think maybe they had their own reasons. I can't really like say what led to them not staying with me initially. But I'm grateful because, you know, when you're raised in different environments, it kind of helps you adapt and become a better person. And I think also my grandmother needed to be there for her daughter. I don't know, sometimes I just make my own conclusions. Probably my mother had a lot at that time, and she was like, God, or maybe she was asking questions, I don't know, or maybe she did not comprehend everything that had happened, but I'm grateful she had support and people who did not tell her to hide her child. She did her best. She did her best, and I wish she was alive to just witness, you know, what has become of her daughter. So after I was done with my primary school, my mom had organized, I think, everything. It was about time now I moved in with her and the rest of the family members. And so she looked for a school in Kisumu. It's a special school called Joyland. And I don't know if it was something that they discussed as a family to do that, because remember, I did my primary school in Kitale, meaning that after my results, I was meant to go to a school around that region. Exactly. And now that I am going to a different region, so they needed to, of course, look for a school. I think the reason why they even took me to a special school is because the whole of my primary life, I had never, not a single day, not a single time, met even just one person with disability. None at all. None, not even in a wheelchair, not even on a crutch. And I think for them, why they even made that decision was like, we need her to know she's not the only person with a disability. There are other people. And in order for her to know that she's not alone, let's take her to a special school where she'll be able to meet all these different kinds of persons with disabilities. And I wish they had spoken to me about it and just briefed me. When I went now to Kisumu, everything was ready, you know, my shopping, my uniform. And then I was just excited moving from Kitale now to Kisumu rather, and also meeting my siblings. You know, my dad, now we are living together. It's not like I'm in a different town and then they're in a different town. And so when they took me to that school, I had a cocktail of emotions. I tell you, I was like, okay, so I can confirm this. Like, my parents do not love me. Of all the schools they could think of, this is the school they thought they should bring me. Why are they bringing me to a school where there are people on wheelchairs? I don't know, people using calipers, people... Like, it was a lot for me. It was really a lot. And I felt like they had just abandoned me or thrown me to this environment that is not what I wanted to be. It's not conducive for me. Maybe it's only when I was in Form 1, I would try, because I noticed as much as I had a disability, they also had different kind of disabilities. They were still living their lives. They were in school. They were performing well. They were doing well for themselves. It got me now thinking, okay, they're just human beings like me, and I shouldn't feel like my parents don't love me. And so remember, still I'm using a crutch, Form 1. Then the principal in that school had a conversation. I think, I'm not sure if it was just first term or second term of Form 1, talked now to my mother and told her, your daughter needs to stop using this crutch. And you see, anyone who's used a crutch will tell you how cumbersome it is. For me, what used to happen with that crutch was my armpits used to darken and my clothes would like kind of tear in the armpits areas and also the knee area because of, I think I can just say it's a form of like friction or something of the sort. And it was a lot, but because I was a bubbly child, for me, that was not even a bother. And so when the principal talked to my mom, and my mom explained to him, like, you see, we don't have that kind of money to afford a prosthetics. However, the principal happened to know another Indian guy, and the Indian guy made a few, I think, calls, and he was able to facilitate everything for me to come to Nairobi and get my first prosthetic for free. Remember, even before I came from Kisumu now to Nairobi to have my first prosthetics, my mother had to now talk to me and tell me, so we want you to get ready. You'll be traveling with your matron to Nairobi to have measurements and have your first prosthesis. And I was so excited. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, so I'm going to walk with both legs. I don't have to use a crutch. And she was like, yeah. That's what is going to happen. But what my mother didn't also know, or even the matron, or probably even the principal, was the whole process. And this is something I'd love for people to know. When someone is going to have their prosthetics for the first time, it's not something that you just go and you're fitted on and in the next few hours or next few days you are able to walk with it. It's a whole lot of process. The first thing one has to do is they have to take measurements of your stump. Now, the stump is that part of the remaining leg that I was either amputated or you're born like that. You also have to go for fittings. You have to be trained. There's something called gait training on how you're supposed to walk. And then it takes times, and it also depends with an individual. So for me, in Form 1, when now I was being brought to Nairobi to have my prosthetics, or I'll call it like an artificial limb, I was just excited. I was happy. And because they had not prepared me in terms of what it entailed before I was able to walk, I went there open-minded, and I was not alone. So we were 3 girls. 2 of them, one had like a snake bite, and then the other one was involved in an accident. And so we came to Nairobi. They had already healed, and we came to Nairobi, and we had our measurements taken. In fact, we stayed in Nairobi, I think, for like 2 or 3 days. And it's that same Indian guy who had like sponsored our transport from from Kisumu to Nairobi and also back, and the hotels where we were staying. And it was hectic when we now got our first prosthetics. It was heavy for me personally. And even when we went back to school, we would talk to each other, just the 3 of us, and we were like, furtherly, we just go back to our normal crutches. This is a lot. Like, it was really a lot. Like, you feel like you're carrying some weight, and you can't move faster. Then again, mentally, you have to be in a space where you're telling yourself, I'm ready to keep on training, doing practices every single day until I perfect my walking. But I'm glad that we never gave up. As much as we were doubting and we had all these, emotions of us thinking, should we not? We still encouraged each other and decided, why not? Let's just see how this unfolds. And we were able to do that. So during my high school, I was able to even play sports. So I was very good in volleyball. And I was even the games captain. And yeah, we won some trophies, and that really made me feel nice. However, still during that particular time, as much as I had a prosthetic, I used to hide it. So I would wear my skirts, school uniform, very long skirts, very long, that they would literally not show my leg, unless when we were doing now sports and we needed to wear the outfits, let's say for volleyball. Those are just like shorts and some tops, so your leg can be seen. And that's when someone could see my artificial limb or my prosthetics at that particular time. I continued with taking part in sports, and not just schoolwork, but I really wanted to be active in other things. And I think also what contributed to me even hiding my leg is because, as much as I was in a special school, we used to have a competition or sports competition with both schools that are that have persons with disabilities, and also schools that have, let me call them like normal people who have both legs. And when we would go for either these events or symposiums, or whichever event that the school has organized, you would see the way people would look at, when people would look at me and pointing fingers, and some would even try and avoid me. And that got into me a lot because I was like, okay, so in order for people not to discriminate me or for people not to stigmatize me, the best way I need to do is to hide my leg and not show it off at all. And so I did that for the longest. The whole of my 4 years in high school, I tried as much as possible not show it. Even when I went home after we've closed school, you would never see my leg. That was not the case when I had a crutch, because with the crutch, whichever outfit I'm wearing, whether it's a trouser, whether it's a skirt, my short leg could not be seen. And there was no concentration or situations where people would stare at me just because I'm walking with a crutch. Or unless I never noticed, but maybe people were staring, I don't know. And being as a child, there are things that you don't put, your focus on. And the fact that I was never discriminated, I wasn't going to make that an issue. So I was comfortable with my crutch, very comfortable. I would run around and I even remember there was a time where someone hit a friend, and I stood, there's a place where I was standing, and I tried to use my crutch just to protect the friend and make sure that they are not like beaten more or something of the sort. And I don't remember, in retrospect, I don't remember it becoming an issue, like it making me maybe hide, because even with the crutch, how would I hide it? It's not like I'll look for a jacket that will cover, the whole part from the upper part to the lower part. No. I think it's just maybe the reception I got when I now got my prosthetics, where people would call me names, not directly, where people would look at me in a different way and maybe not talk to me. And that's what now got into my mind a lot. And I was like, okay, in order for people to interact with me, in order for people to take me as I am, I don't need to expose my leg. Because the moment I expose it, that's when they withdraw. That's where they avoid me. That's when they see. I don't know. I can't really blame them when now I think about it, because maybe they were ignorant. Maybe they thought it's infectious. If they talk to me or when they say hi to me, they would also lose their leg. And these are things that you can't really, pinpoint and say these were the reasons why they did what they did. That did not deter me still, because I cleared my high school and I was called to Masinde Muliro University in Kakamega. Now, this is where I think I faced a lot of discrimination and stigmatization. It is also the part where an area where now I hid completely. In high school, at least someone could see just some small part of my prosthetics. But in campus, not even my roommate. I think it's only one or two roommates who got now an opportunity to see my leg. And it's because I realized the moment I talked about my disability, I can't really say it bothered them, or they were like, you're less of a human being, so we shouldn't interact with you. They just made me feel less of a human being. Not everyone, but a good number of them. I don't remember in university, not a single day I remember where I was confident enough to talk about my disability, or even talk about my prosthetic, or even talk about what happened to me. Why am I walking a certain way? But I'm grateful that as much as I used to face stigmatization, discrimination, I was positive about life. And I'm grateful that I had a very supportive family. By that time, my grandmother had passed on, but my uncles and aunties were there. My mom had also passed. My siblings were there, my cousins, and they would still encourage me and push me and tell me, we are so proud of you. Keep doing what you're doing. And that kind of motivated me, because I even got an opportunity to be a radio presenter in campus. Yes, I used to have my own show in the evening from 7 to 10. and I will discuss, because we were students. So what really mattered to students was relationship, matters. And someone would either call in, text in, and share maybe something they are going through. And I would give, the listeners an opportunity to also chip in and say, what should this person do? Then I'll also play R&B music. And this really resonated with everyone. Remember, during the shows I am in the evening, people never got to meet me. And I used to go by the name of Meg. This is a name that my friends call me. During the day, I would be passing somewhere where fellow students are just having their own conversations, just catching up. And I would randomly hear someone saying, do you listen to Meg's show? That's a nice show and all that, just positive vibes. I am there waiting to see, will someone know that it is me? And I didn't want them to know it was me, because now they would start now discussing me in terms of, she has a disability, she has this leg, she has all this. And that's why I was even given an evening or a night show to just host it. And I think it's only until maybe when I was in my 4th year that some of them who didn't know that Meg was me now got to know that it was me. It's only my roommates, because most of the times they would ask me, where are you going? And I never really wanted to tell them. And some of them, I think because of the interaction they had with me, they were like, this voice sounds familiar, but again, is she the one? No, she can't be the one. The way, because when I'm speaking on radio, I used to be very, I would not say vocal, but I would be loud. I would make like the show interesting. But when I'm outside, I'm a chilled, introverted person and not really engaged so much. So there was no way someone would like make conclusions, she's the one, because it sounded like we were two different people. And I also still struggled with self-acceptance, insecurities, because you are at this point in your life where you want to be appreciated, you want to be taken just like a normal human being, but you're facing all this, I would call them like blocks, and you're facing all these issues. They kind of made me now be more of an introvert, not even like an omnivert or an extrovert. I was more of an introvert. And only maybe things started changing up when I finished and graduated, but still I would hide my leg. I would talk, I'll be in conversations, I would engage in activities. And one of the memorable things that I did well in campus, other than just radio, we got an opportunity where someone knew me, and Safaricom was doing, I would call it like an advertisement kind of way. They were introducing Twitter, and I can't remember the other platform, but it was Twitter, and they were looking, so it's something they had communicated to students in different universities to do like an advert, and then they will pick the best university that has done a good marketing and they've done like a good advert, and then they award them. And so we were among the universities that had been chosen to do that. And after that, they reached out to me and told me to look for, we were around 15 students, and our job was to market their, also other than just coming up with an advert, we were also marketing their new phones, Idios. And they gave all the 15 of us Idios phones. They even took us to Eldoret. They had an event there. We really had a good time. So you can see all this time still, I am hiding my leg. Someone would just notice that I have a disability if I either tell them or when I'm walking and they see that I'm limping. But I was still active, and people would still talk about Meg. They would still talk about things that I'm doing. And I was grateful they didn't. Maybe a few would talk about my disability, but not directly to me. That did not bother me. I was just like, as long as I've hidden my leg, and anyone who asks me about my disability, anyone who asks me about my disability, I'll just ignore them. I'll not tell them anything. I would have like mutual friends. And when they introduced me to their other friends, and then the other friends notice that I have a disability, or they notice that, why is she walking like that? She's not walking straight like any other ladies. And why is she always in trousers? Like we never get to see her in other outfits. And then when they hear that I am using this prosthetic or an assistive device, then they avoid me completely. And when I meet them the next time, these guys are like, someone will be busy on their phone, or they could even turn this other side. And it still made me keep on hiding my leg and saying, there's no point of even just embracing myself and talking about it. I should just let it go. But still remember, all this time, I have people who've not given up on me. My family, my siblings, my cousins, my aunties, my uncles. They keep pushing me. They're like, no, you see, God created you for a reason. It's not like your leg is going to grow. It is not going to grow. And this is something you cannot control. But what can you do with what you already have? There are so many people who've died. You are alive. You are alive for a reason. So just, keep doing what you love doing and don't concentrate more on the naysayers, on the people who are just so negative. And yeah, I would listen to them. But on this other hand, I'm just like, you guys have both legs. You don't know how I'm feeling. Even at some point, I felt like God did not love me. Like, in this whole family, both from my mother's side and my father's side, he just decided, you are the one. You have to be born like this. It made me kind of at some point lose hope in life. But I'm grateful. Looking back, maybe I was depressed. I don't know. But I didn't reach a point where I switched off, like I didn't talk to people or even just distanced myself. No, I am grateful. Like, yeah, I would have those moments, but I was still open to people talking to me, encouraging me. And so I cleared looking for a job. Oh.
Catch more African stories in the next episode of Legally Clueless.
That's part 1 of Meg's story. I think it's so powerful. Like, it really speaks to how stories can help you understand different people's lived realities. I think many times we forget that there's life outside of us, and we're constantly focusing on what's not working for us or agitating for change for us, depending on what communities you belong to. So if you are a woman or a Black woman or an African woman or an African woman with a disability or an African woman who happens to be queer, you know what I mean? Like, there are layers to these things, and sometimes you can, because of your privilege, be oblivious to what other communities are experiencing. And I've found that stories really help jolt us back into having compassion, being connected to each other as humans, no matter how different that other human being is from you, be it their lived experience, be it how they look, be it the color of their skin, you know what I mean? I've found stories to always be that magic wand that knocks us back into our senses and out of our privilege. So in the show notes, we've put a link in case you want to connect with Magdalene, but I would love to know what you connected with from part 1 of her story. Please drop us a comment. I absolutely love reading your comments and interacting with you. And make sure you subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you're listening to it on, so that you do not miss out on part 2, which will be out next Monday. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast to the very end. I appreciate you, and I know you have every single thing it takes to heal. Don't forget to sign up for our wellness talk on the 28th of June. I hope to see you there.
That's it for this episode of Legally Clueless. You can share this podcast with your friends. You can keep it for yourself. I'm not judging. Just make sure you're here next week for the next episode.